This is SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco. Brought to you by Blockchain.com. Invest like your icons with Blockchain.com. The National Medal of Honor Museum. Join the mission at mohmuseum.org. Buffalo Wild Wings. If it's game day, Buffalo Wild Wings is the place to be. Alltech Lansing. Just listen with Alltech Lansing. Perfecting sound since 1927. And by SWBC Mortgage. Customized solutions to help you meet your personal and business goals. Visit SWBC.com. Now your hosts, Nate Newton and Bobby Belt.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco. Thank you for joining us here for Cowboys Crosstalk, however you may be joining us, whether that be on 105 through the Fan, DallasCowboys.com, or all associated social media platforms. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 through the Fan. Tonight, I'm joined by Tommy Yarish from DallasCowboys.com. We've got the three-time Super Bowl champ, six-time Pro Bowler Nate Newton with us. And our special guest tonight is a Texas A&M legend. He is also a former first-round pick, a first-team All-American, and All-Pro at the NFL level, and a three-time Super Bowl champion as well. It is cornerback Kevin Smith. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
His name Pup, man.
I know. Yeah, I know he's Pup. I know he's Pup. I got to get the government name out. Yeah, I got to get the government name out first. Before we get into some of the biographical stuff, some of your time in the NFL and at Texas A&M and things like that, I saw an interesting note about you from your time in high school. Yes, where sir. You were a letterman in baseball, basketball, and track as well as football.
Yes, sir.
And it's always this discussion that goes on with young players these days of trying to get kids to pick one sport, focus on one sport, do one thing. And you'll hear others who say, no, absolutely not. Do not make somebody pick it. That variety helps you become a better football player, can open up some of your options. Are you glad you played the multiple different sports? Is that something you'd recommend
definitely.
For people?
Yeah, whenever any season ended, my dad had me ready for the next season. I knew I wasn't going to be a professional. I didn't think I'd be professional in anything because I was a small guy and definitely not basketball. So track and baseball was like one of my number one, mostly baseball and track. But in West Orange, in Orange, Texas, it's football. It's West Orange Stark Mustangs. And that's all I wanted to be was to be a Mustang and wear the silver helmet that matched the Dallas Cowboys colors. So that's kind of how I was into football, but I was always a smaller guy and had to fight for everything that was on the table.
What positions?
I was, actually, Nate, I was a quarterback. We ran the Veer. We ran the University of Houston Veer at Bill Yeoman, and I was a quarterback, and then I never played defense, and then I ended up being bumped down to the third quarterback and not playing. I missed a couple of Veer reads, and my defensive coach, Mark Foreman, said, what are y'all doing with that little guy? He said, well, we don't want anything to do with him. So he moved me to cornerback. That's how I started playing cornerback and receiver as well. Yeah.
Kevin, it's been a really cool year for you. You start off earlier with getting the key to Orange and then now the College Football Hall of Fame induction. Yeah. What has that been like for you, and what are those two moments mean to you?
It's amazing. Again, I as a little kid, I was in ninth grade, maybe 125 pounds, and I couldn't even lift the bar. And so, just hard work, getting to A&M, with the great names that are on the statues at A&M, John David Crow and Jacob Green, Jacob, Dat Wynn, just some great guys, and Johnny Manziel, just to be able to be on the wall with those guys. And it goes back even further than some of those guys, but it's a great honor, man. I mean, the College Football Hall of Fame, a lot of guys, thousands, millions of guys have played college football. And to be in that, just to be mentioned with some of the greats, going in with Randy Moss, that's going to be a great deal.
We're talking with Kevin Pup Smith tonight, the greatest defensive back in the history of West Orange. No disrespect to Earl Thomas. No disrespect to Earl Thomas. But I'm going to give it to Pup myself. That's for me.
You our boy. Thomas, he tried to buy in and we didn't let him.
We didn't let him in. Ran out locker room.
Earl didn't have the credit. Pup's got it. So you mentioned there that you played receiver, and another note I had seen, you actually got recruited by big-time programs still to play receiver, and you ended up at A&M instead of playing quarterback there. Why did you decide to go on the defensive side of the ball? Why did you decide to go A&M over Houston and LSU and some of the other places?
I was a smaller guy. Again, I was still only about 145, 50 pounds when I got to A&M. And, you know, the receivers were getting bigger. They were getting bigger. Now, I put on 20 pounds, you know, before we started playing. But I just thought, you know, with R.C. Slocum and Jackie Sherrill, when they came in, they had a plan, you know, and I just followed the process. So, I mean, that was my best choice. I didn't see myself really being a big-time college receiver, you know, because we ran the veer. We didn't really run routes. You know, a lot of the play, we were wide open because we ran the ball so much. So it wasn't like we had a route pass and we didn't have you know, an eye quarterback, a Troy Aikman type quarterback. So I just felt like my skills would have been better on the defensive side of the ball.
Let me ask you, I forgot my question.
Well, I got one.
He just amazed me that 120. How much you weigh?
When I got to A&M, Nate, I weighed about maybe 150. Maybe
My
150.
goodness.
Yeah.
So that's the thing you talk about. You were undersized. You made the transition to cornerback. You had success at the high school level to the point that you got recruited to A&M, and then you became a first-team All-American. You became a Thorpe Award finalist. Who do you credit the most for helping develop you to become the player that you were, that by the time you reached the end of your years at A&M, the NFL said this has got to be a first-round pick?
Well, my high school strength program was probably tougher than anything that we did with Mike Woodson, and even at A&M with Bert Hill. So my coach, Cornell Thompson at West Orange Stark High School. And then when I got to A&M, one of the guys that really honed me in on how to make the actual game a science, and, you know, the ball is in the air in 3 seconds, and, you know, the break point, the routes. And I was coached by a guy named Tim Lewis, who had played for Jackie Sherrill for Pittsburgh. And Tim Lewis had gotten to an injury Monday Night Football. He broke his neck. So he was out of football early. He was a first-round draft pick in Green Bay. So he was out of the game after about 2 or 3 years. He came to A&M as a GA. Tim Lewis is still coaching. And so he was one of the guys that really taught me how to play the position of cornerback from a mental standpoint and combine it with the physical traits of it.
The wrecking crew. That's but you are part of the wrecking crew.
Right. So Chet Brooks is a guy who played with Dallas Carter, played with A&M and San Francisco 49ers. He came up with the name Wrecking Crew in '87. I was recruited in '88. So they had started it, but my years, guys like myself, Quentin Coriat, Patrick Bates, Aaron Glenn, you know, Sam Adams, Dad, of course. You know, you can name Aaron Wallace, John Roper. We were a bunch of guys, and the one thing about it, the best guys back then played defense. That's what RC would do. So that's why our offense didn't look so good back then. We just ran the ball. But our best players were moved. Johnny Holland was a quarterback when he first got to A&M. They moved him to linebacker. William Thomas, who played 14 years as a linebacker, was a safety when he first got there. So our best players were put on defense, and that's why we looked so good back then.
The Wrecking Crew. Tommy, you want to add something?
I do. We've called you Pup a few times already tonight. What's the story behind that nickname? Where'd it come from?
Well, I'm the youngest of 6. I have 3 older brothers, and I have sisters that are twins. They are about 3 years older than I was. And then my brothers, I'm kind of probably shouldn't be here, but they're like 10 years older. My third oldest brother. But long story short, they had a puppy. The puppy ran out the yard and got hit by a car.
Wow.
And so that was about the time I was born. And then when they brought me home all wrapped up, my brothers would tell my sisters that I was the puppy, so they would stop crying.
Oh my gosh.
They thought I was a dog. So that's kind of how I got the nickname Pup.
It's a nickname that stuck, though.
And, wow.
I got to ask, you know, we talk about different mentalities at different positions, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, one of Bill Parcells' rules for quarterbacks that he always had was he said clowns can't run a huddle. He's like, if you're the quarterback, you can't be the class clown. You've got to have a certain demeanor. You got to have a certain approach. You know, when you're on the island as a corner, just mano a mano, that's a different mindset. And a lot of people feel like, no, you got to have a chip on your shoulder. You got to have an edge. You got to have a confidence about you that maybe you don't at other positions. And you were a guy who was known to play with a bit of an edge and you know, really start getting in the heads of opposing receivers. Talk about that mentality you had and that competitiveness and how much you think that it benefited you as a player.
Well, I thought I had a lot of confidence coming in from A&M, and it was because I made a lot of plays. When you make plays and you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to have that confidence. When I got to Dallas, I didn't have that dog that when I walked in that locker room, I figured out fast that with Michael Irvin competing against Mike every day, and Alvin Harper, and even K. Martin. People don't know K. Martin.
Kelvin Martin.
Kelvin Martin was more of a dog than anybody on that team. He just didn't. You didn't see it off the field,
right?
And you didn't see it any other place. But if it was one-on-one drills or anything else, Kelvin Martin was going to, try to bite your head off. So, but it was across the board. Darren Woodson is a totally different football player on the field than he is in person. Everybody knows Darren. Even Larry Brown, we pulled it out of Larry.
Yes.
Then when we brought Charles Haley in, then you just had to step up to that level, or because Charles Haley is the type of guy if he know he can push you around, then he's going to do it, and you'll never get back up on him. So you got to keep that edge in the locker room, and that's for it carried over into the field all the time.
That's a great point about the Charles Haley angle. I remember there was a few years back I was talking to Jimmy Smith. And Jimmy was in the 92 class, I think.
Yeah, he was in our class.
Yeah, he was in y'all's class along with Darren.
Woodson,
and
Robert Jones.
And Jimmy had told me, he said, I think one of the reasons why it didn't work out for me in Dallas was, he said, me and Darren were two different types of personalities that Charles tried to get to both of us. He's like, Charles got to me. He's like, Darren pushed through it.
Right.
And Darren was able to survive it. And he obviously had a great career later on. Jimmy did. And Jimmy said he was able to survive it. But Jimmy said, that was a test early on where you learned mental toughness and you learned the ability to rise above it. And I didn't pass the Charles Haley test early. He's like, whereas Darren did and Pup did and some of these other guys, they were able to elevate past that. Is that, for obviously Charles Haley brought a lot to you guys, but do you need somebody like that? And I'll ask both of you guys this. Do you need somebody like that to push young players to, hey, this is the standard very early on, and I need to know if you can handle the pressure of being in this locker room?
You got it, Nate?
Yes, and yes. I don't know about – I'm talking about when I first got to the Cowboys, we were a veteran team, older veteran team. Randy White, Ed Too Tall Jones, guys that was a little bit past their prime. Then when Jimmy came in, Jimmy wanted speed and he wanted aggression. He wanted that, especially coming from his defense.
Right.
And so even after we got set, I remember Mr. Jones said, what do you think about Charles Haley? And all I can say, man, he a beast. Every time I play against, he a beast. Never stop talking, always playing, always thinking. Then they brought Charles in here. That upped us up another level. And he challenged everybody. He had a nickname for you, and it wasn't nice, and he was going to challenge you. He'll look at you. He'll take your film and figure out 3 or 4 things that you ain't doing right, and he going to get at you about that. If he sees somebody get the best of you, he gonna challenge you. Him and Eric Williams were those two guys, man. Yeah. You're going to have to pick up your level of play.
And the one good thing about Charles, he actually bought into what the culture was here as well. He bought in, and then he picked the guys that he knew. He found what he saw as our weak link. So he would go and he attacked that weak link into that weak link, got to that level of play. And, I mean, he stayed on Larry Brown, man. I felt sorry for Larry.
I did too.
And an example was when we played dominoes, Charles would try to intimidate you. He taught Emmett. Emmett didn't know how to play dominoes when I first got here. Emmett's probably the best domino player I know right now. If you win. He challenged you. And in that domino game, it bleeds over to the field. It bleeds over to life. It bled into the whole culture of what we were all about. And then, of course, you had Jimmy Johnson on top of that. So.
Let's take our first break of the night. We're doing Cowboys Crosstalk here. Our guest tonight is Kevin Pup Smith. We got Nate Newton, Tommy Yars from DallasCowboys.com with us. When we come back, let's talk about the development of that culture. And, of course, the thing I'm most excited about is I want to know a little bit about the Jerry Rice battles. I want to know about 93 NFC Championship game. Jerry snapping in the tunnel. Let's hear about all of it. We got Kevin Pup Smith with us. I'm getting it out there. I spit it out there finally, Nate.
No worry.
We'll be back here on the Cowboys Crosstalk on 105.3 The Fan and DallasCowboys.com.
Back to SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Yeah, check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco for Cowboys Crosstalk on 105 through the Fan, DallasCowboys.com, and all associated social media platforms. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions for our guest this evening, Kevin Pup Smith, you can send them in on the 105 through the Fan text at 877-881-1053. That's 877-881-1053. As I mentioned, we are joined tonight by Tommy Arch from DallasCowboys.com. The 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl champ Nate Newton is with us.
Now, what's your name, sir?
Tommy Arch.
Can you get involved in the conversation?
He threw out 2 questions.
I'm just asking, Pop. I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
Second time on here, and you're already throwing me under the bus.
I'm just asking.
What are we doing
Bobby,
here?
I just asked. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We got to talking about Charles Haley and hazing, and Nate just tapped
You gotta
into it a
fight
little
back,
bit
man.
there. Nate tapped into a little bit there. Our guest tonight is the first-team All-American, the NFL All-Pro, and the 3-time Super Bowl champ, Kevin Pup Smith. Pup, we appreciate you joining us, and we're talking about it a little bit during the break. So before we dive into some of the discussion, you mentioned in the first segment Darren Woodson, and Darren Woodson is up for the Hall of Fame again. He's one of the 25 semifinalists that's been named. They'll cut that list down to 15 again, and then they can vote in as many as 5. So he's still got a little bit of a ways to go, but I remember Brian Broaddus, who used to scout for the Cowboys, had worked with DallasCowboys.com for a long time, but he was with the Packers during Darren's heyday, and he said to this day that's the player that he was most jealous of when he'd watch from the opposite sideline of, man, I wish we had that guy.
Right.
And Broaddus, a guy who won a lot of games with Leroy Butler, said, I love Leroy Butler to death. There's no way Leroy Butler should be in the Hall of Fame before Darren Woodson. Woodson changed the position. Talk to us a little bit, Pup, just from your perspective. Make the case for anybody out there who doesn't understand how good Darren Woodson was, why Darren Woodson should be in the Hall of Fame.
He was so good because he never let that ceiling. He always was trying to get better. And like when Darren first got here, people don't know that Darren was a linebacker at Arizona State. He was an experiment. So when we had the Herschel Walker trade, I think Jimmy drafted who he wanted. And then that second pick would be a guy that was like he picked me, then he went with Robert Jones. Then we really needed a Mike linebacker. Then he went Darren Woodson. Then he went Jimmy Smith, Jackson State, HBCU guy. Third round, we had 2 first, 2 second, 2 third. But long story short, Darren came in and said, hey, man, one of the first conversations we had, he said, I need help in cover 1. You played a lot of cover 1 at A&M. And I gave him the Tim Lewis book of playing man-to-man defense.
Right.
And so we never put our corners, and people don't watch, they watch Cowboy football in the early 90s. Our cover guys in the slot was Darren Woodson. We didn't put Dion in there.
That's right.
You normally have to put a smaller guy like Lewis that we have now to cover the slot. Well, that was Darren Woodson back then. And that's why he is probably the best safety during that era, because Leroy Butler couldn't go in there and cover a slot.
No.
He couldn't do it. And Darren could play the hash mark, and he could play the deep middle as well. So he's well-deserving compared to some of the guys that are in there before him. Does he belong in there regardless of that? Yes, he belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame.
I remember Mike Zimmer had talked about this a couple of years ago, and I think he even mentioned it with reporters in training camp this year, where he had said, I feel so bad. He's like, I always want to apologize to Darren Woodson because he was so good, we had to use him in so many different ways. He's like, where if we just let him play free safety or let him play strong
he'd
safety
have more interceptions and
or let him
everything,
play nickel, or we could have let him play will linebacker. If we would have let him play, he would have focused on one position and he would have been the best at whatever he did.
Right.
But he was so good. We needed him in so many different ways, and it spread him too thin, and so he never got to just collect the statistics in one spot that way. And so I know Zimmer has always said, he's like, man, if he doesn't get in, like I owe an apology for lowering his stats because he was just so good. But Tommy, I know you just had a question here for Pop.
See, I'm getting involved now. So
Look at that, Nate. Nate, see, that's your Charles Haley. You're bringing the Darren Woodson out of Tommy.
I'm barking back.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the things that I find interesting, you saw it back then with yourself. You played wide receiver before moving to corner, and we were talking about Darren playing linebacker, moving to safety. When you have guys who have that positional versatility history where they've played multiple positions. You look at guys current day. I think DeMarvion Overshown's a great example of that. He played some safety at Texas. They moved him to linebacker. when you've got that experience in those different spots, how much more does that help you? How much more value does that add to your game in terms of having, experience elsewhere? And in your case, the knock on corners and defensive backs is always, well, they're wide receivers that can't catch, right? But you have the experience at wide receiver where you had hands, obviously. You had
I dropped quite a few, though.
Well, you caught a lot of them, too.
Yeah.
But how much does that extra adage into your game translate onto the field?
It's huge. I mean, again, you spoke on it. Diggs was a receiver.
Yeah.
Before he switched to defensive back.
Right.
So it's huge. It's a big deal, and the versatility as well. That we talked about Darren Woodson with the versatility. We were able to use Darren in that position. Ken Norton was able to play Mike, Sam, and Will.
Right, that's right.
Leon Lett was really supposed to be an end at
That's
6'8". But he played tackle. That was the biggest, largest, tallest defensive tackle we've had ever. I think Ed, Too Tall Jones. So over the years, some of the main guys that were core to the Cowboys were guys that moved positions quite a bit.
And to build on that, in the secondary specifically in your time here, I mean, you just played with elite talent everywhere with guys like Dion and Darren. When that is there as a collective unit, how much more confidence does that breed in the secondary in terms of nobody's going to be able to throw against us?
We prided ourselves on not letting the team throw for I think 200 yards.
Right.
And we were number one defense. I know passing defense with Dion. I mean, probably 2 or 3 times. Other 4 years that we all played together collectively. A lot of people forget Brock Marin. Brock Marin was very underrated.
Yeah.
Brock Marin probably was more athletic as far as in a small box. And the game is played really in a small box.
Right.
5'10", no one ran a 5'10" faster than Brock Marin. I mean, he had blazing under 4 seconds, 3.8, whatever it was in that. And that's moving, man, in that box. So Brock, and we brought George Teague in. So we've had some great secondaries. Bill Bates, when people forget, don't forget about Bill, but they see him as a special team guy. But Bill was very valuable to our nickel defense because he played the Mike linebacker. So we had some great guys, and like you said, versatile. Bill could play Mike linebacker.
Yes. Now let me ask you. So I know this guy was going to ask this question. I'm talking about Bobby Belt, not you, Tommy. You did a great job. But fighting Jerry Rice, man. Tell us about fighting Jerry Rice. How did you get up on that fight?
It started the year before, and here we go with Charles Haley.
Right.
So we're playing San Francisco, and then it's late in the game, and we're up. I think they score a late touchdown to make the game kind of close. The play before, a couple plays before Alvin Harper went on a long one. Mm-hmm. And so we were TV timeout, and I'm just talking crazy. Hey, 80, number 80, I'm just calling him 80. I don't even know your name.
Right.
So Haley's like, hey, that's Jerry Rice. You don't talk to Jerry Rice like that.
Right.
So I told Haley you go put that uniform on if you want to be over there.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, man.
Right. We going at it, man.
Yeah, we're 5 minutes from the Super Bowl, my first year.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not taking your crap, Haley, and you want to go over there, you go over there.
Right.
So that's kind of where it started. And then the next year, he claimed I spit on it.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going to claim that or not claim it.
Wow.
But when we got ready, Jimmy Johnson put the big bold letter, we will win the ball game.
3-inch headlines.
3 inch, put it in how many inches you need.
Yeah.
And that's what started the tunnel battle. And then so the game that we had to battle, and J-Dub got into it, and I don't think you was out there then, because it was before the lineman came out.
Yes.
But the first play of the game, he ran a route. They didn't throw him the ball, and how as a kid you kind of clip somebody's foot.
Yeah.
So I did that to him. So he punched me right on the sideline. You remember he got a 15-yard penalty.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
So it put them in a hole that first drive, and then after that it was just, we just kind of railroaded them.
All we heard was, Pup out there fighting before the game. So, nuts. This our team, we go running out there, man. They woofing and going on. Oh, it was beautiful.
All right.
It was beautiful, man.
I've got to ask if something I heard was true. I won't name the teammate. His name might rhyme with Kenny Gant.
Right.
Yeah.
But Kenny Gant had said last week, he says, he's like, one of the ways he used to get to Jerry, he's like, Jerry hated it. He's like, when he'd come off the line of scrimmage or do anything, he's like, Pup would snap his waistband or pop his waistband, and Jerry would get so annoyed with his waistband getting popped.
So I read an article about Jerry Rice's wife. I don't know if he's still married or not.
Yeah.
And she said that he wouldn't let her vacuum the house, and it had to be vacuumed in a certain way, like Wrigley Field would be cut.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't right, he'd just do it over and over again. And that's how he was with his uniform.
Yes, he was.
So
man.
his towel and everything. So if you tucked and messed with anything that altered his uniform, it pissed him off. And once I saw that he, about that, how anal he was with that carpet deal, vacuuming the carpet, I knew that if I messed with his uniform, then I kind of get under his nerves a little bit. Yeah.
That's elite level.
That's good.
That's different.
high
You know
level
who else
control.
was like that with his uniform? Was Prime.
Prime was like that as
he
well.
was like
yeah.
that with his uniform.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
he?
man.
Yeah.
He used to lay that thing out in the. You had
Like
to
a
walk
body.
around
Yeah.
like a body, from his shoes all the way to
the
his
helmet, to the socks and
flat
everything.
on the ground. You had to walk around.
Like the first day of school when you
Yeah.
lay your outfit out and you're
Yes,
ready to
I
go.
did.
Yeah.
That was, and that's the thing is that you hear about again to reference it back. Brian Broaddus, who's at our station 105 fan, he said he remembers in '95 Green Bay they beat the 49ers. They're going to the NFC title game, and he said everybody's excited, and he said Reggie White just looked depressed, and he went
Yeah.
over and he's like, Reb, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't want to face Eric Williams next week.
Oh, wow.
And he said it was the one guy that just, and he said, and Brian said as soon as he heard Reggie say that, it's like, we're going to lose next week. He's like, if Reggie's already, like, we just won and Reggie's already in his head thinking about a week in advance, I don't want to play Eric Williams. Eric Williams is going to poke me in the eye or do something, whatever else. That got in their head and that gave them an advantage. Similarly, it felt like that irritation that you caused to Jerry Rice would kind of knock him out of the game. How much of the head game was important to you in terms of getting him off of his rhythm?
Well, it was a lot. I mean, our whole goal, and Michael Irvin would speak on it, was to take the other team's will.
That's right.
That's all we preach. Hey, take the guy across from your will. Make him stop believing in himself. Then you've won half the battle. So that was our whole approach. The culture of the team. That's how we thought about it. So Jerry Rice is Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is the greatest of all time as a receiver. No one guy can cover Jerry Rice.
Right.
8 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 3 out of 10. He's going to win 7 of those battles or 8 of those battles. I was just looking for an edge as a young kid and a young guy. I was athletic at the time. I wasn't banged up. I had a lot of energy in me. So it just worked out. With everything we had a good pass rush. We had good linebackers. As Nate said, we didn't have to think a lot. They call us the dumb bunch, DBs.
That was Charles' name.
Yeah, it was a simple defense.
Yeah.
We ran a base defense with quarters across the board. We had zone rules with man. We played man on the corner with zone rules, and it was that simple.
Let's take our next break, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to reflect back on a loss from a couple days ago here with this Dallas Cowboys football team. We got Kevin Pup Smith with us, and let's take a look back at what went right, what maybe went wrong in this game against the Texans on Monday night. Get some of the thoughts from Nate, Tommy, and Pup here, and figure out how they might be able to correct some of this with the short week heading into Washington. That's next on the Cowboys Crosstalk here on 105 through the Fan and DallasCowboys.com.
Back to SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Yeah, check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco. Thank you for joining us on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network for Cowboys Crosstalk. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 through the Fan, joined by Tommy Yarish from DallasCowboys.com. We've got the three-time Super Bowl champion, six-time Pro Bowler Nate Newton here with us. And tonight our special guest, our Cowboys legend this evening, is Kevin Pupsmith, also the three-time Super Bowl champion. All right, so we've delayed it as long as we could, Nate. I know you're not necessarily thrilled to jump into a loss and analyzing what happened between the Cowboys and the Texans, a 34-10 defeat on Monday Night Football, a game that you felt like coming out of halftime at least, like, okay, there's competitiveness here, and you feel like there's an avenue where they might be able to close this game off, finish some things. I'm curious from you, Pup, was there any big takeaway you had coming out of this game, anything you thought of that they can build on, or anything where you said, man, this is the moment where it kind of turned and things went sour for the Cowboys?
I don't know. I think Cooper played better, but I didn't watch it from I watched it from the restaurant I have, but it looks like the Houston Texans wanted the game more. I just saw more energy from a visiting team than a team that's playing at home. And that's the thing that bothered me the most. I just saw more energy and more fight out of the Texans than I saw out of our own team. The X's and O's, they can look at the film and figure that out, but it was just more effort. And sometimes effort will override the whole game, And that's what I saw to the Texans that I didn't see. And it may be that what we used to call the old S moment. Well, and I think the Cowboys got to that point where they were like, hey, here we go again. And then Houston just smashed the gas. Houston has something to play for, so to speak. And right now, it looks like we're not playing for something.
Right. We talked a lot tonight about your confidence at corner, and I'm curious, with corners, confidence is obviously very important. You got to have a short memory because, if you get beat, you got to forget it and just go to the next play. At times this year, the Cowboys corner, some of the younger guys they've been picked on and they just keep throwing their way. When that keeps happening and maybe your confidence starts to dip a little bit,
right?
Obviously making a play gets it back up, but how do you battle that? How do you come back from that and get back to making plays?
Well, speaking on the Cowboy corners, again, one of the best lines I heard on Monday Night Football was, you show me four guys that can't rush the passer, I'll show you four guys that can't cover. So if you got to drop all this, you got to drop all these schemes and blitz every time to get pressure on the quarterback, then that's not a good thing. Of course, Micah has been out most of the year, but the corners, they can only cover for so long. I do think that, we're having problems getting to the quarterback with the four-man pressure. We get no pressure from the inside, no sacks from the inside. So that's that part of it. The other part of it, yes, they have been attacked this year. Diggs has given up some plays as well. He's banged up. But, for the most part, I think they're doing an average job, not all below average job, which is not good for the NFL, and that's why we're 3-7.
Nate, I think the turning point in this game for me was the fumble that was recovered by Tyler Guyton, and a little bit of criticism of just go down, big fella. Like don't try to Desmond Howard Heisman pose this one and make a big play. Obviously, he then has the fumble. They scoop it up. They score, and it felt like things kind of turned from that moment on early in the fourth quarter. How do they battle keeping Guyton's confidence up? We talk about confidence at corner. It feels like the confidence for Guyton is at a season low at this point.
The thing is, this is not the right answer, but it's how I feel. Instead of having 55 passes this past game, you should have 55 runs. Mm-hmm. You gotta find a way to scheme up. Like we used to play the Giants, and we used to say the thing that we liked about the Giants, I hated about the Giants, they had every run known to man. Mm-hmm. They just could come up with different styles and schemes of runs. Same with the modern-day 49ers. Coach McCarthy and his offensive line coach, Coach Mike Solari, they're going to have to come up with 1,000 different run schemes because this is not going to work. Your confidence is shot. Offensive line-wise, your players are hurt and beat up. Even if you want to put Trey Lance in there, he ain't got enough elusiveness to not what's finna come, bro. Not what Dan Quinn finna bring in this thing. You cannot be third and larger than 5 at any time, because 3rd and 6 and anything else gonna get you killed. So you got to find a way to run the ball, screens, draws,
jet sweeps. Yeah,
it don't matter, bro.
How many, Jerry talked after the game with reporters, and he was asked about if there's any sort of quit, quote unquote, setting in with things going sideways with the season now that they sit in 3-7. And Jerry had said, I have a greater concern with offensive line communication, 2 receivers being in the same spot when, on a route, communication on the defense not being great at times. Like he said that he had more concern about communication. And Nate, that's exactly what I want to come to you for. Do you see communication as a larger issue for them right now?
Jimmy used to tell us, he used to ask us, I got a question for you guys. I got a little quick quiz. What's the difference between the fat player, the player that can't play, and the player that's injured? What is the major difference between these guys? We all sit around beating our heads. No difference. None of them going to get on the field, and none of them can play.
Right.
So you not worried about their effort. But if you're running around like somebody kicked the ant bed and everybody going 1,000 different directions, isn't that the same thing? You still get disaster on your plate? Nobody knows what's going on. I remember one game, Pupton was playing, and like he said, they had the four cross.
Yeah, quarters.
And for some reason, it didn't work that game. It's just a bad game. One of the few bad. And they tried to say, man, we couldn't get the play. Jimmy cussed everybody out. This is too simple. To me, this is too simple. If your players are acting dumb, make it simple and put it in their lap.
Keep it simple, yeah. We would try to get aggressive and come with these different schemes on different teams. And we'd be halfway through the game. And Campo and Mike Zimmer would be like, crap that. We're going back to base defense, quarters across the board.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. You play faster when you know what to do. And I think right now it's some bunch of second guessing. Those 2 fake punts, that's just, you grabbing for straws right now with those plays, the last 2 games. If you're running your basic stuff and the clock is running, you got to get positive yards on first, like Nate said, positive yards on second.
Yes.
If it's 3rd and 5, you don't get it, punt the ball. I've heard McCarthy say, hey, every drive should end with the K word, a kick, a punt, a field goal, or something. But it shouldn't be turning the ball over, Guyton fumbling the ball, or not throwing or punting the ball and trying to throw the ball down the middle of the field. Those plays will kill you. We made mistakes in games, but winning solves everything. If you make more positive plays than the negative plays, then you don't even worry about the negative plays on the field.
Jimmy, that man.
They, the number looking back at the Cowboys defense this past week, they played a much higher rate of quarters coverage this week than they played all year. And it seemed like for a lot of the game, it did a decent job at frustrating somewhat C.J. Stroud wanted to do. He kept a lot underneath, did some different things. If communication is the issue, like, Jerry had talked about, and we know Mike Zimmer likes to do a lot of pre-snap disguise and show you different looks, and communication is such a big deal. If that's a struggle, do you think quarters coverage, an increase in quarters coverage the rest of the way would be a simpler way to just let those guys play faster?
It would be a simpler way. But I'm going to go back to the interview. You guys had a guy that played with Texas Longhorns, a linebacker last year. Y'all interviewed him on 105.
DeMarvin Overshown.
No, not Overshown. Older guy. He was
Malik Jefferson?
Malik Jefferson.
Yeah.
And he was speaking at the Super Bowl about Dan Quinn's defense and how he tipped at it and touched it and said Micah kind of does his own thing. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
And then he kind of backed off of it, right?
Yep.
So Jimmy guys that did their own thing with us didn't have the luxury of being on the field. Because if they did their own thing, then we had somebody to replace them. The leverage is not there anymore. The players, the tail is wagging the dog a lot in the NFL right now. So the money that you pay them, you were 1 or 2 plays away from getting cut. Interesting story. I got to tell this story, Nate. And Nate, remember this. We're in training camp. Jimmy Johnson's story. I had nerve to sneak out the dorm my rookie year. I bring 2 other guys with me, right? We get back in the dorm. It's a letter from Bruce May, see Jimmy Johnson. I'm thinking Darren Woodson, they joking with me.
Right.
We come back to the dorm. I go back to sleep. Bruce knocks on the door. I go into Jimmy's office. The other 2 guys are sitting there, a guy named Michael James, and
right.
it was a guy named Donald Harris.
Yes,
He played for the Rangers that drafted him, and then the Cowboys brought him on. Another guy that wasn't even with us that snuck out, his name was Greg Briggs.
Yeah.
Jimmy, he was a 5th-round draft pick. Jimmy told him, you better play the best game of your life. No, he told him, you better count your blessings.
Yeah.
He told Donald Harris, you pick your crap up and you get out of here right now. Go home.
Yeah.
The guy named Michael James was having the best camp, free agent corner from Arkansas. Best camp of all the corners because I was injured. He plays in the preseason game. He gets 3 interceptions in the preseason game. Jimmy cut him that Monday. He never played again.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So Jimmy had the flexibility. You was expendable. If you were expendable, he told me, I can't do nothing with you right now, but I'll get in your pocket. But
he was straight up with you,
they
man.
don't have that leverage no more with these guys. You know, I heard these guys at 5 o'clock turn the light on and walk out the meeting room. It was times we were there at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, Nate. But it's new CBA, so it's totally different right now.
Let's take our final break here, and when we get back, we're going to take a little bit of a look ahead to the Washington Commanders. Short week, traveling to D.C. for this game, and then you've got a quick turnaround again, another short week with the Giants on Thanksgiving. We're joined tonight by Kevin Smith here on Cowboys Crosstalk on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. We will be back here in just a few minutes.
Back to SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Yeah, check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club here at the Star in Frisco for the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 to the Fan, joined by Tommy Yarish from DallasCowboys.com, the three-time Super Bowl champion, six-time Pro Bowler Nate Newton, and our special guest tonight is the former first-team All-American, NFL All-Pro, and also three-time Super Bowl champion Kevin Pup Smith. Kevin, thank you again for joining us and wrapping things up here for this final segment. Nate, I want to start off with you just as we've got Washington, this game against the Commanders coming in. It's felt like a lot of the discussion in the locker room has remained largely positive given the circumstances, because so many different guys are saying to themselves, we have so many division games left. This will just be the third division game. They've got three more after that. Is that the mentality they should continue to have this week, is just like, hey, as long as these division games are still in front of us, we can't afford to get too far down?
You got to stay mentally strong. A lot of your leaders are beat up and missing, so you got the youthful guys that are trying to run around, and the coaches got to stay positive. I mean, everybody understands the situation, but it's up to you as an individual to do that little bit of extra film study, to make sure you get in that whirlpool, get that ice, do what you have to do as a player, because this thing is about tape and what you putting on the film. So these guys, they're going to be positive. You just got to play smarter football. These guys don't play consistently smart.
We've got the return of one number 26, and I want to ask you about that this week, Kevin. With that, it sounds like Deron Bland will be back, ready to perform. Before we get to that, Tommy, obviously you're DallasCowboys.com, and you're out there, you're in the locker room every day, involved with practice and all the different updates. Where do you think things stand, or what's the word at this point about some of the injury situations? Obviously, three offensive linemen leaving the game against Houston. Deron Bland, though, returning to practice. That's a big deal. It sounds like, Brandon Cooks with a projection for the practice availability, with it being a walkthrough. It sounds like Cooks would have been involved in practice today. So where do things stand with some of the bigger injury issues heading into this one? Yeah,
there seems to be a lot of hope that they can get three key guys back, and that's Deron Bland, Brandon Cooks, and Marshawn Nealon. I think a lot of the things that when you look at this defense, they've been so down at the edge rusher position. So getting a guy like Marshawn Nealon potentially back is going to be huge. And then obviously your all-pro corner. You've been missing that all year, right? A ball hawk kind of guy, kind of like Kevin, who we've got down here, who is so good, has a knack for taking the ball away, and had a knack last year for taking it all the way back for touchdowns too. So that's great. And then you've got arguably your best route runner too in Brandon Cooks. As far as guys who were out, Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, remember this was just a walkthrough today, so not necessarily a practice projection, but we saw both of them go down kind of consecutively late in that Texans game. Zach Martin with his other ankle. So those injuries starting to pile up a little bit. Obviously, that's never a good sign. And hope that he's able to get back. And then Tyler Smith, one of your best guards too. So I would say your best offensive lineman right now. So, those are the two ones to watch for, especially up front.
With them feeling like it's looking positive trending towards getting Deron Bland back finally, after missing the entire season to this point. Like we mentioned, you were 26 here in Dallas. He's 26 now, and he has been such a big-time playmaker for them. Just talk a little bit about what you've seen from Deron Bland in his time here in the NFL, how impressive you think he is, and just how big of a boost it can be to get a guy like that injected back into your defense this late in the year.
And he can play the slot, and he can play both sides of the field. When I played, Deion didn't really want to play left corner. He's left-handed. He stayed on the right side. He would flip, but to have a guy like Bland that can play both sides of the field, they can move corners over, and he not only intercepts the ball, he does something with it, which is huge. I mean, if you can turn the field position around, and not only that, score points, that makes a big difference. I mean, that can change the games, that can win games. And so having him come back, they got to have something to play for every week. I can only remember one season that I played, Nate. Right. I mean, I know you guys struggled a little bit before we got here.
Yes, right.
Before me and Darren brought it home. But I don't remember one season where we didn't have a chance. We knew the last two games we weren't going to make the playoffs. So the positive message has to be in the locker room. Yeah, they hadn't played a lot of division games. That has to be the message, and that's what they're putting out there. But to get some of the key players back is going to be great.
One of the things that I found interesting, keeping on the topic of turnovers, is, when you look at this team under Dan Quinn, turnovers was the staple of that defense. And now, some guy, I think Trayvon Diggs told us a couple weeks ago that Mike Zimmer's scheme, part of that is you don't see as many turnovers. So what is the formula for turnovers kind of regardless of scheme?
You have to mix it up with zone, and you have to be creative. I tell people all the time, we bumped our corners. Me and Dion, we were bumped all the time. When you play man-to-man, you don't see the ball, then you're not going to make a lot of interceptions. So Quinn had more of a zone scheme, believe it or not, where Diggs and, he was off man, and even Bland, a lot of those plays where they were playing off man, where Zimmer wants to play his press and be a little closer. It works both ways, but the turnovers are going to happen more when the guys are in zone.
This is going to be a big week in all likelihood for running the football from both perspectives. I mean, you've talked about it, Nate, that you would rather see 55 running plays than 55 dropbacks. And this is a Washington defense that has really struggled to slow down the run this game.
150 yards a game. Against Pittsburgh, I think they totaled it 43 times for 140 yards, and Philadelphia did it 40 times for 100 and for 228 yards with a 5.5 average. If we can get the time possession like Pittsburgh and Philly did, both of them was over 32 minutes. Philly was 36 minutes. That would give our defense, who have played first half football and been let down in the second half because they get stretched out. If we can keep them off the field, keep them fresh, especially with Bland probably being on the snap count, keep him fresh where he can make a play late in the game to help you win. But you're going to have to try to run that football. Now, they got good, nice players over there. They got nice defensive players. They got the Ron Payne. They got the second-round pick, Newton. So they see that Newton. Yeah. I don't know his first name, but I know his last name. They got, what I'm saying? They got players over there, and they got a dude that is 6'3", 220 pounds, Jeremy Chin, safety. Will bring it.
We got the last little about 40 seconds or so. Really quickly, Pup, you had missed the entire 95 season basically after tearing your Achilles. When you came back, how realistic is it with the edges likely being such a big part in this game, in the run game? How realistic is it or how long do you think it may take Deron Bland to get back into the physicality of the game, knowing he might have to maintain the edge in the run game?
If he worked out with Britt Brown, he's ready to go. Yeah. So he should be. Britt, if Britt said he's ready to go, then he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Kevin Smith, we very much appreciate it. Some great stories.
Thank you.
I know we got a lot of texts in, people talking about how much they enjoyed the stories. Tommy Arstyle, Cowboys.com.
Glad
thank
you could join us, Tommy.
And as
Thanks,
always,
man.
Nate Newton, thank you for joining us. That has been it for the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk. We will talk to you guys again next Wednesday.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!